Good afternoon, friends. How are you all doing? I'm sure you all are doing awesome as I am. So, this is Sangeeta, and I'll be taking your chapter 2, Nelson Mandela, class 10, Long Walk to Freedom. So, I'm sure you all know Nelson Mandela. He is not an introduction to especially India. He was a revolutionary in his own country and very much to the likes of Mahatma Gandhi. So, if you all know Mahatma Gandhi, I'm sure you will be able to totally relate to this chapter. In fact, a lot many times when I'm explaining this chapter, I'm reminded of the revolutionary struggle that took place in India. So, let's start with this chapter. Now, this chapter is a part of an autobiography that is written by Nelson Mandela himself. So, mind you, for the language, it's a little bit on the tougher side. But I'm sure if you all read this chapter at least say around 4 or 5 times, depending upon your capacity, your level of understanding, you will be able to grasp this chapter very well. So it's not so difficult, but it is a little tough on the explanation side because he has written, the legend has written this chapter. So to get into his mind and understand what he is trying to say can be a little daunting. So I wish you all the best in this chapter. And if you have any doubts, or if you want me to explain some part of this chapter, do let me know in the comment section. Before I start with this chapter, a little bit of history about what we are going to study. Unlike India, where the revolutionary struggle was all about freedom, in Africa there was something called apartheid struggle. So apartheid is basically a political system that separates people according to their race. So in Africa, I'm sure you all know that we have the black race, right? The population over there is largely dominated by the black tribes. So when the Britishers came as colonizers, there was a distinct divide between the black race and the white race. So this struggle was called the apartheid struggle. Okay, so you can take a little bit of you get a little bit of idea of Nelson Mandela when you read this little paragraph over here. In fact, I can just quickly read it out for you before I start. So Nelson Mandela, South Africa's first black president. Nelson Mandela has become South Africa's first black president after more than 3 centuries of white rule. 3 centuries means around 300 years. Again, very similar to India, we had around 250 years of struggle. They had around 300. Mr. Mandela's African National Congress, ANC, like how we had Indian National Congress, they had the African National Congress, party won 252 of the 400 seats in the first democratic election of South Africa's history. The inauguration ceremony took place in the Union Building Amphitheatre in Pretoria today, attended by politicians and dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world. So all this information is not going to be asked to you from the exam point of view, but this is only read out to give you a better understanding of this chapter. So basically, it was an inauguration day, the inauguration of South Africa, as well as the inauguration of the first democratic party that had won elections and a sweeping elections 252 out of 400 seats. The inauguration ceremony took place in a union building, that is a government official building. It was basically an amphitheater. It was a historical monument, which today we know as Pretoria. So it was attended by many dignitaries and politicians all around the world. And it is mentioned that never again, never will this beautiful land experience the oppression of one by another, said Mandela in his address. So this is going to come in the chapter. I'll read it out for you later. So it was mentioned that never will this such a beautiful land, that is South Africa, experience oppression by another country. Jubilant scenes of the street of Pretoria followed by the ceremony with blacks, whites, and colored celebrating together. So there were the blacks, and there were the whites, and there were the colored. So when we mention colored race, basically we are talking about the different skin types around the world. Again, just to give you a small input over here, there are five skin types. We have the brown skin type, Indians, Asians, then the Mongolid race have the yellow skin types, and then the Africans we know have the black skin types, and then we have the white skin type, the Caucasians, largely belonging to America, Canada, Europe, and then down under, like Australia, they are recognized by the red skin type. So there are these five. So put together, it becomes colored, right? So when you say a colored race had gathered in Africa, it basically means people from all over the world, all skin types, had gathered in Africa to celebrate this inauguration. More than 1 lakh South African men, women, and children of all races sang and danced with joy. So here, let's start this beautiful little chapter. 10th May dawned bright and clear. So the date was 10th May. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and the world leaders who were coming to pay their respect before the inauguration. So he says that I was besieged, I was surrounded because there was people from all over the world, leaders who had come to witness this inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So it would be one of its kind because it would be one of the largest international gatherings. I think we know a little bit of history. South Africa was one of the few countries who were quite late, to receive their 100% independence. So by the time they were celebrating the inauguration, it was a surprise. It was a welcomed uh, initiative by action by the countries all over the world. They wanted to be a part of this great celebration because they had walked this path before. They understood, they knew the pain, the struggle that it takes to become an independent nation. So they were here to celebrate. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union Building in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So this ceremony, where was it held? This is a one mark question. Where was it held? In the amphitheater. Amphitheaters were those theaters that are basically circular in shape, and they were primarily built by the Romans for their entertainment. They used to have all kinds of games and entertainment and competitions in those amphitheaters. So basically, you can say it is a kind of a round stadium, right, where people gather and witness what's going on in the center. So this was an amphitheater, and for many years this had been a historical place, and it was also the center. It was also the Union Building, and where is it located? In Pretoria. So this had been the seat of white supremacy. That means it had been the center. They had for many decades they had controlled Africa from this center, from this very place. एंड नाउ आज ये एक साइट ऑफ सेलिब्रेशन था क्योंकि यहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोग गैदर्ड थे दे आर गैदर्ड फॉर एन इनॉग्रेशन सो पीपल फ्रॉम डिफरेंट कलर्स एंड डिफरेंट नेशंस एज आई टोल्ड यू डिफरेंट कलर्स मीन्स डिफरेंट स्किन टाइप्स सो लोग सारे वर्ल्ड के सारे नेशनैलिटी के स्किन टाइप के रेसेस के वो यहाँ पे आए हुए थे साउथ अफ्रीका आए थे उसके इनॉग्रेशन के लिए ओके इट वाज द फर्स्ट democratic non-racial government कहाँ पे अफ्रीका पे On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. D. Clerk was first sworn in as the second deputy president. So he just mentions कि उनके साथ कौन थे उनकी daughter थी Zenani और उनका swearing in मतलब शपथ लेना बाद में था पहले किनकी बारी थी Mr. D. Clerk जो second deputy president थे. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. फिर उसके बाद थाबू मेबेकी was sworn in as the first deputy president और फिर इनकी बारी आई नेल्सन मंडेला की बारी आई और जब वो आए तो उन्होंने क्या बोला I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution. So उन्होंने शपथ ली कि अफ्रीकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को वो ओबे करेंगे और उसको अपहोल्ड करेंगे. And to devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. वो लोगों के भलाई के लिए अपने आप को सौंप देंगे. ओके, ही विल डिवोट हिमसेल्फ टू द वेलबींग ऑफ द पीपल. द assembled guests and the watching world I said. तो मैंने जो सारे लोग assemble थे, मतलब गैदर थे, कलेक्टेड थे, उनको मैंने एड्रेस किया, मैंने कहा. अभी हम जो पढ़ेंगे वो स्पीच का हिस्सा है जो उन्होंने अपने इनॉग्रेशन सेरेमनी में लोगों को बताया था, सुनाया था. Today all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. तो वो कहते हैं कि आज हम सब यहाँ पे प्रेजेंट है, हम ग्लोरी देते हैं टू न्यू बॉर्न लिबर्टी, बिकॉज लिबर्टी का मतलब क्या है? फ्रीडम. सो आज उसका जन्मदिन, आज वो पैदा हुआ है हमारे कंट्री में. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. So एक ऐसे disaster से, so colonization, slavery is a kind of disaster, human disaster. So इस disaster that lasted too long, 300 years, उसमें से एक ऐसी society ने जन्म लिया है which all humanity will be proud of. So सारी ह्यूमैनिटी को इस सोसाइटी से, मतलब इस अफ्रीकन नेशन से गर्व होगा. We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be the host to the nations of the world on our own soil. और कुछ ही साल पहले हम आउटलॉज थे. आउटलॉज का मतलब क्या है? कि हम अपने ही we had broken laws, मतलब we were considered as law breakers in our own country for not so long. मतलब कुछ ही टाइम पहले हम आउटलॉज माने जाते, मतलब लॉ ब्रेकर्स माने जाते, और आज हमको ये मौका मिला है कि हम पूरे वर्ल्ड का के होस्ट बनेंगे. दैट मीन्स हम सबको यहाँ पे, हम एवरी वन ओवर हियर प्रेजेंट इज आवर गेस्ट. तो वी आर होस्टिंग टू द नेशंस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड इन आवर सॉइल, हमारी भूमि में. We thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. तो वैसे कहते हैं कि हम सबको यहाँ पे इंटरनेशनल गेस्ट को हम वेलकम करते हैं, राइट? और वो उनको थैंक यू कहते हैं. वी थैंक यू फॉर टेकिंग पोजेशन विद अस, मतलब हमारे साथ होने के लिए, हमारे कंट्री के लोगों के साथ होने के लिए, क्योंकि ये हमारे लिए एक जस्टिस है, एक विक्ट्री फॉर जस्टिस है, पीस एंड ह्यूमन डिग्निटी. तो ये ह्यूमन डिग्निटी, जस्टिस एंड पीस का ये एक जीत है. सो थैंक यू डियर डिग्निटरीज, हमारे साथ इस खुशी के माहौल में शामिल होने का. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. So वो कहते हैं कि we have at last, हमको finally हमारे political emancipation मिला है. Emancipation का मतलब होता है freedom from restriction, मतलब अभी तक हम गुलाम थे. So it's a kind of freedom from any kind of control. तो हमको पॉलिटिकल फ्रीडम मिला है, राइट? पॉलिटिकल एमेंसिपेशन मिला है. एंड हम कसम खाते हैं, वी प्लेज कि हम सब लोगों को फ्री करेंगे, दैट वी विल लिबरेट ऑल द पीपल. बिकॉज अभी हमको पेपर पे लिबर्टी मिला है, पेपर पे फ्रीडम मिला है, लेकिन अभी भी लोग गरीबी में है, डिप्राइव्ड है, मतलब उनको सब चीजें नहीं मिलती है. दे आर डिप्राइव्ड ऑफ थिंग्स, बेसिक थिंग्स ऑफ लाइफ. अभी भी दुख है, सफरिंग है, ओके, और डिस्क्रिमिनेशन है, ओके, जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन और दूसरे प्रकार के डिस्क्रिमिनेशन मतलब भेदभाव है. सो हमको सिर्फ पेपर पे फ्रीडम नहीं चाहिए, हमको लोगों को ये सब फ्रीडम भी देने हैं. Never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. तो वो कहते हैं कि कभी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि हमारी कंट्री फिर से ये सिचुएशन देखेगी. हमने 300 साल की गुलामी देखी है, और कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि हम कभी भी इस प्रकार का ऑपरेशन, मतलब गुलामी, फिर से देखेंगे. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. तो वो कहते हैं कि सन कभी भी सेट नहीं करेगा, मतलब कभी भी अंधेरा नहीं होगा, कभी भी रात नहीं ढलेगी इतने सुंदर अचीवमेंट में. ओके, यहाँ से हमको सिर्फ आगे ही जाना है, और कभी भी हमारे कंट्री में इतना सुंदर का जो हमको फ्रीडम मिला है, उसका कभी भी दी एंड नहीं होगा. A few moments later, तो यहाँ तक उनका स्पीच था. Okay, now we are taken back into the actual celebration. So let's put ourselves in that celebration. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troops carriers rode in past perfect formation over the Union building. So, जब उनका speech खत्म हुआ, जब वो formalities खत्म हुए, तो there was a display. जैसे इंडिया में भी आपने देखा होगा, every Republic Day there is a array, there is a spectacular aerial array of aeroplanes, of jets, जहाँ पे they have beautiful colors displayed through the smoke that is released from these jets. Okay, वैसे ही कुछ अफ्रीका में भी हुआ. तो अफ्रीका, इंडिया में तो हम आपको स्काई पे 3 कलर दिखाई देंगे, बट अफ्रीका में आपको उनके फ्लैग के हिसाब से कलर दिखाई देंगे. So हमने ये सब स्काई पे देखा. So we lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular मतलब बहुत सुंदर array display of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers rode in perfect formation. तो ये ना एक perfect formation जैसे बनाते हैं when they are up in the sky. It was only a display of pinpoint precision and military force. So बोलते कि it was not only a सिर्फ एक precision, pinpoint precision का display नहीं था, या military force का display नहीं था, लेकिन ये military की loyalty का display था. Okay, it was a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. ये उनके लिए एक loyalty था. किसके लिए? एक गवर्नमेंट के लिए जो फ्री तरीके से और बहुत ही फेयर, सही तरीके से इलेक्ट किया गया था. Only moments before, the highest general of South African Defence Force and Police, their chest bedecked with ribbons and medals from the days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. Okay, now देखो, just imagine, ये लोग जो हाई पोजीशंस कैरी करते हैं, मिलिट्री के हाई पोजीशंस कैरी करते हैं, कुछ टाइम के पहले उन्होंने मेरे को सल्यूट किया. राइट, दे सल्यूटेड मी एंड दे प्लेस्ड देयर लॉयल्टी टू मी. ओके, तो वो कौन रहे होंगे? दे माइट हैव बीन हाईली डेकोरेटेड ऑफिसर्स ऑफ द आर्मी, probably even belonging to white race. Okay, because abhi Africa has not been truly and freely has got its freedom. So most of the high officials, जैसे इंडिया में भी ऐसे हुआ करता था, जो भी आपके जो अंग्रेज थे, ब्रिटिशर्स थे, they would enjoy the high ranks and the high positions. Okay, same like that. So वहां पे भी the whites who were bedecked with medals का मतलब है they were highly decorated army officers, उन्होंने अफ्रीकन प्रेसिडेंट नेल्सन मंडेला को सल्यूट किया और उनको रिस्पेक्ट किया. ओके, सो देखो, ये दिखाता है कि ये एक जीत है, ये डेमोक्रेसी की जीत है. ओके, ये एक फेयरली इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट की जीत है. बिकॉज उन्होंने ऐसे तो नहीं कहा कि ये एक ब्लैक है, हम इनको सल्यूट नहीं करेंगे. Alright, so they were respecting, they were saluting the liberty, the victory of liberty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. Or I was not unmindful, matlab I was mindful. देखो, this is conversion, ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन ऑफ नेगेटिव टू पॉजिटिव. आई वाज नॉट अनमाइंडफुल, तो मैंने आपको आई थिंक पहले भी बताया है कि हाउ डू यू ट्रांसफॉर्म अ नेगेटिव टू पॉजिटिव. आप नॉट निकाल दो एंड वर्ड का ऑपोजिट कर दो. आई वाज नॉट अनमाइंडफुल मींस आई वाज माइंडफुल. राइट, सो यू विल से आई वाज नॉट अनमाइंडफुल ऑफ द फैक्ट, मतलब मेरे को इस चीज का पूरा ध्यान था, माइंड था, दैट नॉट सो मेनी इयर्स बिफोर they would not have saluted but arrested me. मेरे को इस चीज का पूरा ध्यान था कि कुछ साल के पहले की बात होती तो मेरे को सल्यूट नहीं कर रहे होते, वो मेरे को अरेस्ट कर रहे होते. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. So finally, last में conclusively, एक chevron of Impala jets. So chevron of Impala jets are those pattern that is formed in the sky, the V-shaped pattern that is formed in the sky that you must have seen birds do, migratory birds make, okay, when they are flying long distance. In fact, there is a science to it. There's a science of aerodynamics to it. So you can Google it to find out what exactly it is. तो वैसे ही आपके जो इम्पाला जेट्स है वो भी ऐसे ही इस प्रकार के फॉर्मेशंस बनाते हैं. ओके, वी शेप फॉर्मेशंस बनाते हैं. सो वो एक स्मोक ट्रेल छोड़ रहे थे। इंडिया में जैसे यू विल सी कि ग्रीन एंड ऑरेंज के स्मोक ट्रेल छोड़े जाते हैं, वैसे ही वहां पे अफ्रीका में अफ्रीकन फ्लैग के स्मोक ट्रेल छोड़े गए थे। दैट इज बेसिकली ब्लैक, रेड, ग्रीन, ब्लू एंड गोल्ड। So the day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of white singing Kosi Sikele Li Africa and the black singing Die Stem. So now this is very interesting over here. See, what draws your attention is the whites are singing the African song. Right, and the blacks are singing the the national anthem of the whites. So Die Stem is the Latin uh, national anthems that belong to the whites. राइट, सो यहाँ पे देखो एक दूसरे को रिस्पेक्ट करते हुए वो नेशनल एंथम गा रहे हैं। सो इंटरेस्टिंग, अ ब्यूटीफुल साइट ऑफ इंटीग्रेशन, नेशनल इंटीग्रेशन, the old anthem of the republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem that they once despised. Despised का मतलब है not very much liked. उनको पसंद नहीं था। So वो एक दूसरे को से पहले वो एक दूसरे ग्रुप को पसंद नहीं करते थे। Blacks would not mingle with the whites or the whites would not mingle with the blacks. So आज वो एक दूसरे के लिरिक्स का नेशनल एंथम गा रहे हैं और आज वो एक नीदर ऑफ द ग्रुप्स नो द लिरिक्स, वो एक दूसरे के नेशनल एंथम के मीनिंग भी नहीं जानते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी वो गा रहे हैं। लेकिन they would soon know, so there's a hope that there will soon be an integration, a stronger integration, और वो उस वर्ड्स के मीनिंग को उसके वर्ड्स को बाय हार्ट सीखने वाले, बिकॉज इट्स अ वे ऑफ एक्सेप्टिंग द अदर्स डिफरेंसेस। On the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. So वो बोलते हैं on the day of inauguration I was overwhelmed with history. So उनको history की एक बात याद आ गई। Okay, उस दिन, उस inauguration के दिन he was flooded, he overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, और वो ये था कि first decade of the 20th century, so it would be something like 1910. Okay, the first decade of the 20th century starts from the 1900. So aapka probably the first decade is 110 years. So the first decade of around the 20th century, there was an Anglo-Boer war. Boer is the local tribal population of Africa. Anglo का मतलब होता है the British, the English. So there was a war, there was not a war, there was a triple, there was a strife between the English and the local tribal people over there. Before my own birth, और ये नेल्सन मंडेला के बर्थ के कुछ ही साल पहले की बात थी। The white skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences. फिर जब ये war खत्म हुआ, this bitter struggle, this bitter internal clash खत्म हुआ, ये आप इसे सिविल वॉर भी कह सकते हो। जब वो खत्म हुआ तो there was a big wall of difference, तू मैं, okay? So the whites would not mingle with the blacks and the blacks would not mingle with the whites. So there was a wall of division erected between the whites and the blacks. That is the meaning of this sentence. That the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their difference, no doubt उन्होंने war तो खत्म कर लिया, but they erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people on their own land. The structure that they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. और उसके बाद उन्होंने एक प्रकार का एक ऐसा सोसाइटी क्रिएट किया वहां पे जहां पे व्हाइट्स ने डोमिनेट किया ओवर द ब्लैक्स। और ये बहुत ही सबसे क्रूअल, सबसे हार्श और सबसे इनह्यूमन मतलब जिसमें इंसानियत ना हो, ऐसा सोसाइटी खड़ा हो गया अफ्रीका में। ओके, सो बेसिकली वहां पे ना 1910 के बाद एक बहुत ही बिटर स्ट्रगल स्टार्ट हुआ बिटवीन द व्हाइट्स एंड द ब्लैक्स। And my own eighth decade as a man. So now in the last decade of the 20th century, अभी हम कहाँ पे आ गए? 20th century के last decade में आ गए. So it would be 1990. All right. So the last decade is the last 10 years of the 20th century. So 1990 and my own 8th decade as a man. अभी नेल्सन मंडेला की उम्र क्या होगी? 8th decade, मतलब he is around 80 years as a man. The system has been overturned. So अभी क्या हुआ? अभी पूरा सिस्टम क्या हो गया? ओवरटर्न हो गया, खत्म हो गया. मतलब ये जो डिवीजन था, ये जो डिवाइड था, ये जो रेशियल सुप्रीमेसी, रेशियल डोमिनेशन, व्हाइट सुप्रीमेसी का जो डिवाइड था, वो गिर गया. Okay? It was overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedom of all the people regardless of the color of their skin. And it has been replaced by what? By people who are ready to recognize that there is a difference. There is a difference in the skin color. But despite that, it's more important that their rights should be recognized. So the rights and the freedom of the people is very, very important. All right. So this is what it says. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, though people whose sufferings and courage can never be counted or repaid. तो ये जो sacrifice आया, ये जो दिन आया, ये unimaginable, आप imagine भी नहीं कर सकते हो, सोच भी नहीं सकते हो, इतने सारे sacrifices से आया. Thousands of the people have given this sacrifice, they have paid this sacrifice. Okay, so मतलब उनके courage, उनके suffering से ये हमको ये दिन देखने को मिला है. और हम इसे काउंट नहीं कर सकते और इसे रीपे भी नहीं कर सकते. आई एम रिमाइंडेड ऑफ द पीपल, द लाइक्स ऑफ चंद्रशेखर आजाद और भगत सिंह, okay, Sukhdev Guru. So we cannot repay their sacrifice, and we cannot even count the thousands of the people who are not known on the books of in the books of history, but who have given up their lives. Okay, we just know them as a number. 1,100 people massacred in Jallianwala Bagh. Do we even know the names of all those people? They were also revolutionaries and they were also freedom fighters and they also had the heart of Bhagat Singh. But unfortunately, we will never know those names probably. Okay, so और हम उनको शायद थैंक यू भी नहीं बोल सकते because ये थैंक यू सिर्फ हमारे दिल में है. ओके, वो है ही नहीं उनको थैंक यू बोलने के लिए. सो आप काउंट भी नहीं कर सकते हो कितने ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने इंडिया के स्ट्रगल के लिए अपनी जान दी. सेम वे ही सेज दैट we will never be able to know the sufferings and the courage that it has taken, and we can never count or repay the thousands of people who have given their lives as sacrifice. I feel that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. तो क्या कहते हैं कि मुझे ऐसे लग रहा था उस दिन कि मैं क्या हूँ, मैं बस एक सम हूँ. I'm just a sum total. They were the number. Okay, so I'm just the finale, you can say. I'm not the whole. I'm just the sum of all those African patriots who have gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. So वो खत्म हो गया because अभी कोई sacrifices नहीं होंगे for the freedom, because अभी freedom तो मिल गया है. Okay, so it has no doubt ended, but it has begun by me. So I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. So he says कि मेरे को इस चीज का पेन था. इट पेन्ड मी, मतलब मेरे को दुख था कि मैं कभी उनको थैंक यू नहीं कह पाऊंगा फेस टू फेस. दिल में तो है थैंक यू, बट हम कह नहीं पाएंगे. हम कभी उनको स्टेज में लाके हम उनको कोमेमोरेट नहीं कर पाएंगे. सिर्फ उनके स्टैचू पे फूल हार कर पाएंगे जो जैसे इंडिया करती है. बट कैन वी कॉल देम ऑन द स्टेज एंड एक्चुअली से थैंक यू, राइट? तो उनको इस चीज का दुख था कि हम कभी भी उनको थैंक यू नहीं कह पाएंगे फेस टू फेस, एंड दे विल नेवर बी एबल टू सी, और वो कभी देख नहीं पाएंगे कि उनकी जो शहीदगी है, मतलब उनकी जो सैक्रिफाइसेस थे, उनके मार्टियरडम थे, उन्होंने क्या रंग लेके आए, व्हाट दे हैव रॉट. ओके, व्हाट सैक्रिफाइसेस दे हैव they have achieved, they have got for India, I mean for Africa in this case. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. So, ये जो policy of apartheid, I explain to you this in the start of this chapter. What is this term apartheid? So he says ये जो policy of apartheid है, it has created deep wounds in my country, in my people. कोई भी प्रकार का racial discrimination या casteism या communalism एक ऐसा चोट दे जाती है जिसको भरना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. So that's what he says कि it has created a lasting wound. All of us will spend many years if not generation, और बहुत टाइम लगता है इन चीजों को भुलाने के लिए. So many years, अगर many years कम पड़े, if not many years, at least generations लगेंगे. Okay, recovering from the profound hurt, उस दुख से, उस गम से उभरने के लिए. But the decades of oppression and the brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos and the Walter Sissolos, the Chief Lutherless, the Yusuf Dados, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Bookways of our time. So Bookways of our time. तो वो कहते हैं कि ये जो ऑपरेशन था, ये जो decades of oppression था और brutality था, उसका एक और अनइंटेंडेड इफेक्ट हुआ. मतलब दुख की बात तो है, लेकिन उसका एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट भी था कि उसने प्रोड्यूस किया किसको? ग्रेट पीपल ऑफ अफ्रीका. That is, he mentions them. You can see them with their picture over here. So it has given us, like I would replace by these names by saying it has given us Chandrasekhar Azad and Bhagat Singh. So over here, these were the great revolutionaries of Africa. It has produced all these great men, men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity. So ये इतने great लोग को हम मिल पाए, हम जान पाए इन लोगों को. And they are like many may never be known again. और उनके like मतलब उनके जैसे शायद हम फिर से नहीं जान पाएंगे. Okay, same as like in India, I always get reminded of the Indian struggle. शायद अगर colonialism इंडिया में नहीं आता और ये ब्रिटिश राज इंडिया में नहीं आता, रिवोल्यूशनरी स्ट्रगल इंडिया में नहीं आता, क्या हम जान पाएंगे कि महात्मा गांधी ever lived this earth? Okay, he might have been a simple little barrister, probably working in, say, maybe Africa, probably, or maybe in some small little place in India. Correct? India may have never known the greatness of this little human being. Same as with Bhagat Singh, we may have never known the courage that this fearless man had in him for his country. So, in fact, has all these I just wonder, has it died in us? No, actually, it is still there. But it needs such an event, it needs such a cause to create that Bhagat Singh once again in us. Right? So there are people there. Bhagat Singh is still alive in us. Mahatma Gandhi is still alive in us. But it will need a greater cause. So in a way, thanks to this struggle, that it has brought to forefront such great people. और अगर ये नहीं हुआ होता तो हम कभी ऐसे लोगों को जान नहीं पाते. We may have never known the likes of such great people. Perhaps it requires such depth of operation to create such heights of character. So वो क्या कहते हैं, शायद ऐसा ऑपरेशन होना कभी कभी अनिवार्य है, जरूरी है कि हम इतने ग्रेट हाइट्स ऑफ कैरेक्टर के लोग को जान पाए. My country is rich in minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So वो कहते हैं कि मेरी country is very famous, is बहुत famous है किसके लिए? Minerals के लिए. We all know that. He says my country is very rich in minerals and gems. We know that Africa leads in mineral resources and gem production. Diamond वहां से आता है, ठीक है, ज्यादातर वर्ल्ड में. सो बेसिकली उसके सॉइल के नीचे इट्स अ कंट्री दैट इज वेरी रिच इन मिनरल्स. लेकिन वो कहते हैं कि इस मिनरल से भी ज्यादा, बहुत ज्यादा, ये जो रियल वेल्थ है वो हमारे लोगों का है. ओके, इट इज दिस पीपल, द फाइनर एंड ट्रूअर देन द प्योरेस्ट डायमंड. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. सो बोलते हैं कि ये मेरे को मेरे इन कॉमरेड से मेरे को स्ट्रगल के बारे में पता चला, ओके, एंड आई लर्न द मीनिंग ऑफ करेज, और मेरे को इन कॉमरेड से रियल मीनिंग करेज का पता चला। टाइम एंड अगेन आई हैव सीन men and women risk and give their lives for an idea, और मैंने काफी टाइम एंड अगेन मैंने अगेन एंड अगेन मैंने देखा है कि कैसे men women ने अपना जान निछावर किया, they have risked their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies imagination. तो उन्होंने बोला है कि मैंने खुद देखा है लोग, people stand up to attack and torture, मतलब वो झुके नहीं है, ओके, और वो ब्रेक नहीं हुए हैं, they have not broken and they have shown strength, और उन्होंने ताकत दिखाया है and resilience दिखाया है, ओके, मतलब वो प्रॉब्लम को फेस करने की एबिलिटी दिखाई है, दैट डिफाइज इमेजिनेशन, डिफाइज मतलब आप इमेजिन भी नहीं कर सकते हो, ओके, बिकॉज इट डिफाइज योर इमेजिनेशन. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. This is a very beautiful line which says कि fear तो सबको होता है, right? He says कि मैंने ये सीखा है कि fear नहीं होने का ये मतलब नहीं है कि तुम्हारे पास कि तुम निडर हो, ओके, ऐसा कोई नहीं कह सकते कि हम निडर हैं, लेकिन नहीं डरने का ये मतलब होता है कि तुमने अपने डर के ऊपर के पार जीत हासिल की है. सो he says I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. courage का मतलब ये नहीं है कि fear नहीं है, but it is a triumph over it. लेकिन आपने fear के ऊपर जीत हासिल की है. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but who conquers that fear. So एक brave इंसान वो है जो ऐसा नहीं कह सकता कि मेरे को डर नहीं लगता है, लेकिन वो ऐसा है जिसने फियर के ऊपर अपना जीत हासिल किया है. Okay, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. So he says कि no one is born hating, कोई ऐसा पैदा नहीं हुआ है जो जिसको जिसको बोला गया है that you have to hate another person of another skin color. So no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. आप पैदा नहीं होते हो किसी को हेट करते करते, ओके, आप सीखते हो हेट करना क्योंकि तुमको सिखाया जाता है, एक बच्चे को सिखाया जाता है not to mingle with certain races, with certain caste, creed, color types, right? So that is the reason how we learn to hate, because hate does not come naturally, love comes naturally. So that's what he says, people must learn to hate. If they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. So अगर जो चीज naturally आता है, to love comes naturally, और to hate is not natural. So अगर hate सिखाया जा सकता है, तो सोचो कितना आसान है love सिखाना. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, और अगर उनको सिखाया जा सकता है to hate, तो they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally, because वो एक ज्यादा आसान चीज है. It comes naturally to the human being. Then it's opposite. Even in the grimmest time in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second. तो बोलता है in the grimmest of times, मतलब ऐसे मोमेंट में जब मैं सबसे सैड था, grimmest of time, जब मैं prison में, he was locked up in the prison for many years. Okay, you all must be knowing that. So जब वो prison में कई सालों तक locked up थे for his revolutionary activities, तो उनको एंड व्हेन माय कॉमरेड्स एंड आई वर पुश्ड टू लिमिट, और मेरे कॉमरेड्स मतलब मेरे साथ जो थे, जब हमको पुश किया गया टू द लिमिट्स, मतलब टू द वेरी एक्सटेंट ऑफ नॉट बीइंग एबल टू टेक एनी मोर, उस वक्त भी मैंने एक ग्लिमर ऑफ, एक झलकी ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी देखा था इन वन ऑफ द गार्ड्स, भले फॉर अ सेकेंड. ओके, इट कुड बी अ स्मॉल a little smile, or it could be a little act of kindness from the guards. So ये एक इट्स अ ग्लिमर, ये झलकी है ह्यूमैनिटी की. मतलब वो भले ही अपने यूनिफॉर्म में कैद क्यों ना हो और चेहरे पे एक रोब क्यों ना हो, बिकॉज दे आर मेड टू डू व्हाट दे आर डूइंग राइट नाउ. सो इसके बावजूद भी वो ह्यूमन बीइंग्स है, उससे वो अलग नहीं हो सकते, और टाइम एंड अगेन उनको वो ग्लिमर ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी उनकी आंखों में दिखता और वो उनको जिंदा रखता. ओके, ये चीज इनको जिंदा रखता। किसको? नेल्सन मंडेला को। वो उनके अंदर एक आशा जगाता। इट वुड गिव हिम होप दैट man's goodness is still alive. So man's goodness is a flame that cannot be that can be hidden but never extinguished. Extinguished मतलब खत्म होना। So वो बोलते हैं कि इंसान की जो अच्छाई है वो एक ऐसी फ्लेम है जिसको आप हिडन रख सकते हो लेकिन आप कभी भी बुझा नहीं सकते। In life, every man has twin obligations. So वो कहते हैं कि this is again a very important question which I'll be taking up just now. So pay attention. In life, man has twin obligations. So ये question ऐसे आता है, what are the twin obligations and why can't man complete his obligation? Okay, so हर इंसान के दो responsibilities होते हैं। Obligation मतलब जो आपको करना है, जो आपके responsibilities होते हैं। एक to his family, to his parents, friends, children, and he has an obligation to his people. तो ये दो responsibilities किसके तरफ है? एक उसकी family, okay? उसको अपने family के लिए करना है और दूसरा उसकी community के लिए करना है, उसके लोगों के लिए करना है। To his to his people, his community, his country, in a civil and humane society. मतलब एक normal society में ये possible है। Okay, each man is able to fulfill those obligations. जैसे हम कुछ भी कर सकते हैं, इंडिया से फ्री कंट्री, तो हमारी ऑब्लिगेशन हम पूरा कर सकते हैं हमारी कंट्री के लिए और हमारी फैमिली के लिए। So in a civil society, we can fulfill these obligations according to our inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, मतलब जब colonized था, जब South Africa colonial rule में था, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both those obligations. So मेरे लिए मेरे टाइम पे साउथ अफ्रीका में पॉसिबल नहीं था कि ये दोनों ऑब्लिगेशंस को मैं पूरा कर पाऊं। In South Africa, a man of color. So man of color again, what am I talking about? मैंने आपको पहले बताया था ना, color का मतलब anyone who is not of the white race. So a man of color मतलब probably a black who attempted to live a human being was punished and isolated. तो उसको punish किया जाता, उसे isolate किया जाता, okay? In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. So अगर वो सोसाइटी के लिए कुछ करने जाता तो उसको अपने फैमिली से वंचित रहना पड़ता। He would be ripped apart. Okay, he would not be able to live a normal family life. So उसको ऐसी जिंदगी जीनी पड़ती, एक सीक्रेसी, a life of secrecy and rebellion. Rebellion का मतलब है to revolt against someone, okay, to go against the country, against the ruling government is called rebellion. So उनको एक life, because वो obviously वो country के से विद्रोह कर रहे अपने for his country, for his people. So he would be termed as a rebel. He would be termed as a terrorist, like Bhagat Singh was termed as a terrorist by the British. So उनको एक हिडन, एक सीक्रेट जिंदगी जीना पड़ता। तो क्या भगत सिंह उस वक्त बोल पाते कि मेरे को अपने फादर के लिए करना है, मेरे को अपनी सिस्टर की शादी करवानी है, राइट? ही वुड नॉट बी एबल टू लीड अ नॉर्मल फैमिली लाइफ। Okay, so that is the meaning of this sentence. He would have to live a life of secrecy and rebel. He would not be able to lead a normal family life. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligation as a son, a brother, a father and a husband. तो वो उन्होंने ऐसे कहा कि स्टार्टिंग में मेरा कोई ऐसे इरादा नहीं था कि आई विल चूज माय कंट्री ओवर माय फैमिली, या उनको तो आइडिया भी शायद नहीं हुआ होगा कि मेरे को अपनी फैमिली की कुर्बानी देनी पड़ेगी फॉर माय कंट्री। लेकिन जब उन्होंने अटेम्प्ट किया अपने लोगों के लिए काम करना, टू सर्व माय पीपल, आई फाउंड, मैंने रियलाइज किया कि मेरे को वंचित किया जा रहा है टू सर्व माय पीपल, टू सर्व माय कंट्री, टू बी एन ओबीडिएंट सन, to be a brother and to be a father or a husband. So he says, I was not born with a hunger to be free. He says कि मैं पैदा नहीं हुआ था कि he was not born with a hunger to be free का मतलब he did not even know what is slavery, what is colonialism. He didn't even know what is apartheid struggle. So he says, I was born free in every way I could, free to run in the fields, and free to swim in the clear stream that ran through the village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride in the broad backs of slow moving bulls. So he says मैं हर एंगल से फ्री था. मैं अपने पेरेंट्स के हट के आजू बाजू भाग सकता था, खेल सकता था, पानी में स्विम कर सकता था in the stream in that ran through the river, through the village. I could even roast mealies under the stars. Okay, जो बच्चे करते हैं. And ride the back of bulls. Okay, मतलब मैं bulls के back को ride कर सकता था. All these little things that children do. Okay, and being from the village, so all these things that the children do in the village. So he says, for me, that was freedom. And it was as long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe. So as long as मैंने customs, मेरे tribe के customs को follow किया, I was free to do whatever I wanted. I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. So मेरे लिए वो freedom था. I was not troubled by the laws that were created by man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. और जब मैंने realize किया कि मेरा जो boyhood था वो एक illusion था. Okay, मतलब मेरी जो अभी तक जो मेरी जो freedom थी वो एक भ्रम है, एक illusion है. तब when I discovered as a young man, मैंने realize किया as a young man कि मेरा freedom मेरे से तो ले लिया गया है by these colonizers. That time was born in a yearning in him to be free. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom for myself. So in this road to freedom, pehle, he just wanted to be, as a student, he wanted freedom meant only for being himself. He only wanted freedom for myself. I wanted freedom for myself. The transitory freedom of being able to stay out at night. So as little boys do, young boys do. So the freedom to stay out at night and read what I pleased to do and to go where I chose to go. So yeah, as a young boy, these were his little freedom. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedom of achieving my potential, of earning my keeps, of earning my keeps. So बाद में जब वो young man बने, मतलब young man का मतलब probably now he is earning, he is working in Johannesburg. So अभी उनके लिए freedom क्या था? Achieving his potential, मतलब probably getting a good job for himself and earning of my keep, of marrying and having a family. मतलब अभी शादी करना, मतलब उनकी इच्छा के हिसाब से शादी करना and to have a family, वो उनके लिए freedom था. Freedom not to be obstructed by in a lawful life. और कुछ भी चीज करने के लिए, मतलब छोटे से चीज क्यों ना हो, चाहे वो traveling in the bus हो या traveling in the train हो, not to be obstructed in his lawful life. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. See, on his road to freedom, he is growing. His definition of freedom is growing. पहले उनके लिए freedom as a young boy कुछ और था, as a young man वो बदलता है, अभी वो बड़े हो रहे हैं, तो he is realizing freedom मेरे लिए सिर्फ मेरा free होना काफी नहीं है. Okay, he realized that it was that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free as well. So उन्होंने realize कि सिर्फ मैं free नहीं हूँ, मेरे भाई and बहन भी जो हैं, मतलब मेरे जो society के बाकी लोग हैं, वो भी मेरे जैसे ही हैं, वो भी free नहीं है. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. So मेरे जैसे सारे लोगों का freedom curtail किया गया था. Curtail मतलब काटा गया था, रोका गया था by जो मेरे जैसे दिखते थे, that looked like I did. मतलब यहाँ पे हम apartheid struggle की ही बात कर रहे हैं. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. और तब मेरे लोगों का freedom मेरा freedom बन गया, because we got connected in our vision. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family-loving husband into a man without home, that forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. सो ये जो ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन आया तब आया व्हेन आई रियलाइज दैट मेरा फ्रीडम सिर्फ मेरा नहीं है, अगर मेरे लोग भी फ्री नहीं है तो उसका ये मतलब होता है कि मैं भी फ्री नहीं हूँ. सो इट वॉज दिस डिजायर फॉर फ्रीडम दैट ऑफ माई पीपल, मतलब मेरे लोगों के फ्रीडम का की जो इच्छा थी उसने मेरी लाइफ को चेंज कर दिया. ओके, इट मेड मी रियलाइज दैट इट ट्रांसफॉर्म्ड अ फ्राइटन यंग मैन, एक डरा हुआ सहमा बच्चा, मतलब नेल्सन मंडेला खुद क्या बन गए, एक बोल्ड इंसान बन गए. दैट ड्रोव अ लॉ अबाइडिंग अटॉर्नी, वो एक लॉ अबाइडिंग अटॉर्नी थे, वो क्या बन गए, क्रिमिनल बन गए. दैट टर्न्ड अ फैमिली लविंग हस्बैंड, वो एक फैमिली लविंग हस्बैंड थे और क्या बन गए, a homeless man, a man without a home, that forced a loving man to live like a monk. और एक लाइफ लविंग मैन, उनको जिंदगी का को एंजॉय करने का, जिंदगी को जिंदा दिली से जीने का जो इच्छा था उसके वो भी मर गया और वो क्या बन गए, एक मॉन्क की जिंदगी जीने के लिए मजबूर हो गए. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and the limited freedom I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. So he says कि मैं मेरे कोई भाई से ज्यादा सेल्फ सैक्रिफाइसिंग नहीं हूँ या ज्यादा वर्चुअस नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मैंने रियलाइज किया कि मैं ये फ्रीडम नहीं एंजॉय कर सकता. जब जब तक मेरे लोग फ्री नहीं हैं तब तक आई कैन नॉट एंजॉय माई फ्रीडम. पीपल फ्रीडम इज इनडिविजिबल, तो इसके ऊपर भी कभी कभी क्वेश्चन आता है एक्सप्लेन. तो ये जो सब चीज हमने अभी बोला कि अगर मेरे लोग फ्री नहीं है तो मैं भी फ्री नहीं हूँ. सो ये सेंटेंस ये कह रहा है कि फ्रीडम जो है उसको हम डिवाइड नहीं कर सकते, और कोई चेन अगर कोई भी एक इंसान पे हो तो सबके ऊपर होता है. और नॉट ओनली चेन मतलब बांधने मतलब जिनको बांधा है उसके ऊपर चेन होता है, लेकिन बांधने वाला भी गुलाम होता है. मतलब इन अ वे ब्लैक्स, ये जितने भी अफ्रीकन थे वो तो गुलाम थे ही, लेकिन जो उनको गुलामी के चुंगल में बांध रहे थे, द वाइट्स, द ब्रिटिश, वो भी इन अ वे गुलाम थे. Let's see how. So he says that freedom is indivisible, matlab it cannot be divided. The chains of any one of my people were the chains of on all of them. So he says the chains, कोई भी एक इंसान पे, कोई भी एक लोग पे अगर चेन था, चेन का मतलब है it is a symbol of bondages. So the chain on any one of them means that it is a chain, it is a bondage of on all of the people. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. Now, see this line. This shows the greatness of this man. He says कि मेरे को सिर्फ मेरे लिए ही फ्रीडम नहीं चाहिए था, मेरे लोगों के लिए भी चाहिए था, लेकिन दिस इज द ग्रेटनेस, मेरे को मेरे दुश्मन के लिए भी फ्रीडम चाहिए था. दिस लास्ट पैराग्राफ इज माइंड ब्लोइंग. This is what really speaks out, brings out the legend in Nelson Mandela. He says, I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. मतलब हमको तो उन्होंने ऑप्रेस किया ही है तो हम तो ऑप्रेस्ड है ही, हमको तो फ्रीडम दिलाना ही है, इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट, ह्यूमन राइट्स. लेकिन उन लोगों को भी फ्रीडम चाहिए बिकॉज दे आर ऑल्सो ऑप्रेस्ड. वो जानते नहीं है, they just don't know that they are oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. तो वो किस चीज के गुलाम है, वो hatred के गुलाम है. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. वो narrow-mindedness and prejudice के पीछे गुलाम है. ओके मतलब प्रेजुडिज्म का मतलब होता है जहाँ पे तुम सोचते हो कि तुम्हारा रेस अच्छा है, और नैरो माइंडेड मतलब वन ट्रैक माइंड, लिमिटेड थिंकिंग का जो सोच होता है, तो तुम उसके गुलाम हो. आई एम नॉट ट्रूली फ्री इफ आई एम टेकिंग अवे समवन एल्सेस फ्रीडम. और मैं सही मायने में फ्री नहीं हूँ अगर मैं किसी का फ्रीडम ले रहा हूँ. जस्ट एज श्योरली एज आई एम नॉट फ्री व्हेन माय फ्रीडम इज टेकन फ्रॉम मी. जैसे मैं फ्री नहीं हूँ अगर कोई और मेरा फ्रीडम ले रहा है. सो यहाँ पे हम दोनों ही ऑप्रेस है, लेने वाला और जिसके ऊपर ऑपरेशन किया गया है. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So दोनों ही यहाँ पे वो वंचित है, ह्यूमैनिटी से वंचित है. जिसको ऑप्रेस किया जा रहा है वो तो वंचित है ही, वो तो सबड्यूड है ही, ऑप्रेस्ड है ही, गुलाम है ही. लेकिन जो ऑप्रेसर है वो भी गुलाम है, वो अपनी सोच का गुलाम है. So that is the end of this chapter. I hope you have enjoyed it. A very beautiful, deep and thought. It contains so much of emotions, and we can so clearly, connect with this chapter because these thoughts, race through our minds as well when we read our history books and we realize the amount of sacrifices that our Indian leaders have given to make this country as we are seeing it a free country. So it's I always get charged up when I read this chapter because you are thrown into the throes of emotions when you read it, and you are reminded of the great leaders that have walked the earth, especially that have walked India. I would suggest that you all read this chapter at least 4 or 5 times because it's not easy to understand great thoughts that have been put into the mm, into the words of Nelson Mandela. So, if you have any doubt, if you want me to explain any particular part, let me know. I will explain that part for you. Take care. Have a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow at 2.